It's very brightly colored and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while.
We want to be free to do what we want to do.
We're Muhammad Ali and Sonny Barker, the president of Hell's Angels.
This is 1095.
J.D. Strange. Mr. Strange. Can you talk me through J.D. Strange? I've got your book here. So
Circus.
I would love to tell you I've read it, but it arrived yesterday. So I literally picked it up this morning and jumped into it, and I'm like 10 pages in, so I can't give a lot of feedback. But obviously I know you as James Newman, but maybe as a good intro, from a J.D. Strange point of view, do you want to give us the background?
Should I slip into character? Should I be J.D. Strange, or should I be James Newman talking about J.D. Strange? Let's do James Newman talking about J.D. Strange. So I was co-host on a podcast, and the podcast was called This Strange Life. And some of the material we talked about on the podcast was not the kind of thing I would like to put my name to, and it was a little bit risky. So I thought we should all change our names on the podcast. So Mike became Mountain Man, Jordan became Chugs, and I became J.D. Strange. And there was a couple of other reasons. People had approached me at the university where I work and asked about my books and stuff, and I just don't like that. I just want to keep separate. So Strange was This Strange Life. It's strange. J.D. was probably a nod towards either Joe Dillon, who's a character in 5 of my books, or Jack Daniels, maybe both. But it was a nice lockdown project to create J.D. because I got together with Marcin, the Polish artist, who he just produced all this work. So I managed, and I built a website. I made a brand. I reworked all my other material. So I said goodbye to James Newman as a literary figure and hello to J.D. Strange.
Awesome. So this is only recent then. So that's related to the Strange Life podcast, right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, that was the seed of the idea. Yeah. That was I just wanted another identity. Maybe I'm bipolar. I don't know. You have to ask the other me.
Well, maybe I will. So I will enjoy reading this book. Is this I know you've written a number of books, but is this the first one under J.D. Strange then? And will there be more, or is this have you written more under J.D. Strange?
Well, J.D. Strange had an interesting biography. He was found. He was an abandoned child outside of a charity shop in Kent, next to a Thighmaster piece of exercise equipment and a pair of jelly shoes. And he moved into an adopted family, and then he, at the age of 14, ran away to join the circus. And he later traveled around Europe, through India, then he jumped on the wrong boat and ended up in Bangkok. Now, the circus talks about his journey from when he was running away from the circus. So he got into the circus, and it was all too chaotic. Like that blanket behind you, terribly chaotic, flapping around. So he ran away from the circus. Most people run to the circus, but he ran away. And the book documents that period of his life. It's set inside a mental institution.
So I think I've just hit that part. I'm just at the part where it's been suggested he goes and spends some time inside an institution. So yeah, I'm just at that. I mean, I'm 15 pages in probably. I literally just picked it up this morning.
And it's suggested by the human cannibal. I don't know if you should take advice from a human cannibal, but JD does, because the human cannibal is like a father figure to him.
Awesome. Well, I will enjoy it. So how long, I mean, we've known each other a while, but there's a lot of questions I haven't asked you, which is why I wanted to do this, which I thought would be interesting. But from a writing perspective, when did you start writing? When did you realize you had a love of writing? Do you have a love of writing? Because often a lot of writers I speak to have a kind of interesting relationship with writing. It's something they cannot stop doing, but not always they love it. It's just an outlet often. But yeah, when did it start for you? Talk me through your beginnings as a writer and when you realized it was something you wanted to do.
I think the French author Genet was asked this question. He said at birth, maybe before. I can remember putting together stories before I could actually put them down on paper. I think we all do, right? We all make up stories and songs and poems in our minds, and then we transcribe them later. But I was writing long form fiction when I was 6 or 7 years old, and I wasn't very good at anything else at school. I was a nervous child. I was asthmatic. I was socially inept. But I was in a really kind situation where the teachers were kind of creative people, and they read the work, and then they would structure lessons around plotting novels and building stories and stuff. So they actually focused lessons around one of my stronger points. So I had affirmation from a young age, and then I would write. I'd win competitions as a kid for writing poetry and stuff, and I would go and meet the mayor and stuff like this, So I knew I was quite good at it, but also it's not something to be too vocal about. Mm. You don't want to be admitting that you're into poetry or creative fiction in a kind of comprehensive secondary school on the edge of a council estate. You don't do that. So what I did, I then went into music. So it was okay to write if you had a guitar. So I would write songs instead. And then I came back to fiction when I was probably out of school and just, in a more sacred place. So, and particularly when I came to Asia, like Bangkok, I really began to write because there was so much material stuff here. So I've always been doing it.
What was the first book you published?
Bangkok Express.
Okay.
In 2006 or 2007.
So very influenced. I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know whether your books, did your books kind of go, the kind of airport route, when you go through the airports in Thailand, there's these kind of books that you see, and over the years, I don't know if you were often on those shelves, but there's a bit of there's a kind of group of writers, right? Yourself being one of them, that have been here a number of years. Some have probably gone, but that really kind of lean on all this great material in terms of characters and color and everything you get from Thailand, particularly Bangkok.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a nice, for me at least, it still is, in a way, a nice genre, the expat crime fiction novel. It doesn't really have a market now, since after Me Too, we're not allowed to be muscular men in sleazy bars anymore. It's totally unfashionable now. But at the time, I guess from like the mid-90s, early to mid-90s, until about 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there was like a golden age of expat fiction.
Yeah, right. I'm trying to think which ones I read. The ones I went through a time of reading all the prison ones, which were not, they're not really, actually, many of those weren't fiction, actually. Many of those were, I mean, there was numerous ones where people had, I can't remember the names of them. There was an Aussie guy, which was a big one, when they'd done time inside a jail and then gone home after 10 years and written a book. There was a whole genre around that, but they weren't fiction. I assume they weren't fiction. Whether they were
a little bit, weren't they?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, how much they stretched the truth, I don't know. I forget the real famous one, but yeah.
I liked Escape. I thought that was a very well written book. The guy called Macmillan, I think. The Damage Done was another.
That's right. Damage Done was
Warren Fellows.
That's right. He was an Aussie guy from Newtown. That's it. That was the one I was remembering.
Yeah, I love those. There's a really nice one set in South America as well, in Bolivia, I think, called Marching Powder. They might have made that might have become a movie, actually.
No, it hasn't.
Not yet.
Well, it hasn't, and I do not understand why not, because honestly, that book is It's a phenomenal story. I mean, that is the guy. He's a British guy, right? And he gets done for trafficking. He ends up inside a Bolivian prison. He ends up, doesn't he connect with some like one of the travel book writers or something? I can't remember, but there's a guy who he starts doing tours inside the Bolivian jail, right, and supplying cocaine to a lot of the backpacking community, if you can call it that.
Dark tourism.
It is a mad story because it reads like fiction and it's not. That book is, I think I read it 20 years ago, probably.
I love the part where he rocks up, doesn't rock up, he's taken to the prison and they put a plan in front of him, like with different lots. And he doesn't know what's going on, but he has to choose his cell, right?
He has to buy his cell, yeah.
Based on the amount of cash he's got.
It's a crazy book. I think he kind of wakes up there having been beaten up. You know, it's almost like he was beaten unconscious, I think. And he wakes up and he's faced with this dilemma of he needs to find a cell. But it's basically like, you know, you're in a real economy that exists within this prison system where, you know, you start at the bottom and then obviously the kind of big time drug dealers and controllers, whatever, at the top are living in kind of plush apartment blocks within the prison complex. I mean, it does read like fiction, although it's not. But it's not been made into a film, as far as I know, which does surprise me because it would make a great movie.
Yeah, it must have been considered because they're not that expensive to make, are they? Prison movies. You only need one set most of the time. All the cast are in one place. It's a controlled environment. Was it Midnight Express was a good one, wasn't it?
That was one of the original ones. Yeah, but that was one of the older ones, I think. And then, of course, the more recent one, which I haven't even seen. What's the most recent one, which with
the Thai one?
Actor we both like. My brain is not.
In Thailand?
Yeah, it was filmed. Actually, a lot of it was filmed. Yeah.
Prayer Before Dawn.
Prayer Before Dawn. Yeah, which actually it was filmed. I think a lot of it was filmed in the Philippines, although it's based in Thailand because I think access to locations in terms of filming inside and the sizes of the prisons made it easier to film there. I know Vithya, when he was in it, went to the Philippines for his scenes. So I don't know how much they shot over there, but I haven't seen that film. I should watch it. You seen it? Any good?
Yeah, it's good. I like one of the techniques they used, which I liked, was it was for a long time it was in Thai language. But there were no subtitles. So if you don't speak Thai, it actually feels like you're in there. You know, you're kind of confused, you're lost, you don't know what's going on. And the tension just builds. And the camera is kind of over the shoulder, but kind of shaky, you know, like the wrestler kind of style, you know. So yeah, good cinematography. Great performance by, is it Joe Cole, I think?
Yeah, Joe Cole.
Yeah, he always does well. You know, he's a proper actor. He's an actor's actor. He can do voices. You know, he nails, because the original guy who wrote the book, who I'm friends with on social media, and I forget his name. But he's from Liverpool. Yeah. And Joe speaks kind of like we do, but he nails this this Liverpool accent throughout, you know, and he bulks up, you know, and he learns how to box, you know, he's a proper character actor.
Well, I shall check it out. There's some more stuff I want to ask you on movies, but before we get into it, I also want to chat about your writing a bit more. And just in terms of, you know, the people that have inspired you, if at all. I mean, you have your own style as a writer, as all writers do, but have you taken, you know, kind of inspiration and hint from other writers, or is it just kind of broad in terms of where you know, the kind of writers that inspire and motivate you?
Yeah, I mean, you can't help it. But I try, and I don't really read much modern stuff now, and I'm not inspired by anyone who is alive, apart from one person who I probably won't mention. But for me, it was, you know, just before television came a really big thing, you know, but after the novel was massive. So you had the Gothic Victorian period where, you know, the novel really was the only form of entertainment other than classical music or whatever, or see in a band. So the novel was kind of in its infancy, but it became, I feel a lot of that stuff's overwritten. It's not immediate enough. But in the 1920s, 30s, kind of TV came along, and I think novelists had to up their game a little bit more. They had to write stuff that was more immediate, that gripped the audience's attention a lot faster, and was also affordable. So you had the penny dreadfuls, and then you had the pulp magazines, the birth of Gumshoe Detective, Dashiell Hammett, Raymond Chandler, heavily influences what I do. That style of pulp, noir, hard-boiled, gritty detective, muscular fiction written by men who drink hard and womanize. I love that. I love that style.
It's a diet.
But
Sorry, go
on. Beyond that, so 30s, 40s, Patrick Hamilton was a great London writer working in the wartime period. Books like Hangover Square and The Slaves of Solitude. Awesome, really good novelist. And then coming out, we go into the 50s, and you have the Beat generation, who I'm like a scholar of. I love the Beats, William Burroughs, Allen Ginsberg, Gregory Corso, all these people. Alexander Trocchi deserves a mention as well, and even Hunter S. Thompson, going into the 60s and the 70s. But probably my favorite novels were in the Anthony Burgess needs a mention, going Clockwork Orange, going into the 80s, and that's probably where I stop. I don't read that much modern fiction, apart from some crime stuff. But mostly it's 30s, 50s, and 60s for me.
Is that, do you think, do you think just because your age, or do you think because actually, the way you're talking there, some of those older novels and just the kind of people that put content out, do you just think the stuff that goes out now is just completely different? There's a lot less depth to it, and this whole kind of consumption of online content now as well.
Yeah, it's the media phenomenon. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think you're right, where books now have to compete with Netflix television series, and ultimately that's where the best stuff is. If you want media content, you're probably better off watching films or watching TV series, because it's a collaborative effort, and it is better, I think, for the end product if there's some kind of collaboration involved in the manufacturing of that product. So I love the romantic idea of one guy sitting in a room writing books, and I did it for a long time in my own life. I like that process. But I also like the process of collaboration, working with other people, working on a film set or whatever. There's a lot, it's more, it's healthier, I think. We need to be mixing with people.
I wonder, it's funny actually you're talking about this, because it was like a point I had down to chat about, which was this whole collaboration. And I do wonder whether writing and the kind of writing you'll talk about and reading will become like an art as opposed to a common pastime. It's like this kind of digestion of online content even with this year, you wonder what's going to happen with cinemas now, whether, so much stuff is going to be streamed. But yeah, to your point, and it was going to be one of my questions, is just your own view of, you started talking about it then, and I'll let you kind of continue, but your own view of collaboration. And some people, writers particularly, hate it, other people love it. I know you and I have worked on a little bit of stuff. I love the collaborative process because it's a very different, it's a different way of doing things. What's your whole view on collaboration? I butt in, sorry, but you were about to say it, and I just wanted to kind of elevate that and let you go on a bit more with it.
Yeah, for a long time in my career, it's all being product based. It's all about the end product. It's all about writing the best book I can, or the best film script, or whatever. And it's only recently I thought, what if that doesn't matter? What if the book doesn't really matter, or the film doesn't matter, but the relationships you build whilst you're creating that, they are the things, they are what's more important. You know, people are more important than objects. So if you get the relationships right and you work with the right people, and you know when you do, I like to call it the it was coined by Burroughs and Geisel in New York. They believed that when they worked on a project, when there was two people working on the project, there'd be a third mind. So there'd be a third mind. There'd be two people working, but there'd be like this shared mind, which is a really nice concept. It's almost like being in a romantic relationship, you know, when you just have this shared thing between you. And that when you collaborate with the right people, that's what happens. And it's through the kind of nurturing of that relationship and offering all you can and accepting your faults and accepting their faults, you know, it's like a relationship. So if you get that right, then the book or the film script or the movie or the television commercial, whatever you're making, should be of good quality.
Really love that. I'd not heard when, you know, I was kind of getting excited as you're saying it, because I've been there in that situation. I think you and I have been there at points. So, you know, probably when we were doing the full moon party stuff, I remember sitting in a bar by the river in Bangkok. But there is this, you know, when you get into this collaborative creative process with two of you or more, there is this kind of third thing that is somewhere in the void of wherever it is that becomes the creation. And you get this really awesome energy when you're doing it sometimes, when both of you are kind of talking through characters and motivations and plot lines. And it's such a, personally, you know, it's one of the most satisfying, fun processes ever. And yeah, really energizing, and time just slips away when you're in that. You know, I'm sure you've been there where you're just like, shit, I've just been doing this for, you know, 8-10 hours and not had anything to eat.
I get about 4 hours and then my brain fries. But yeah, and you can move that kind of idea on to the crew when you're shooting a film. There's normally about 12 people, which is the same sort of size as a hunter-gatherer hunting party. You know, so it's just that, or a football team or a rugby team. You know, it's just the right size, a body of people to work functionally. You know, so yeah, I think we're tapping into all kinds of stuff when we're creating, and then when we're producing. You know, it's like we're tapping into behavior which is innate and wants to be expressed. You know, so we're lucky to be in a position where we can do that.
Well, probably a good segue to talk about Crazy Medicine, which I posted the trailer up this week, and I will go back and watch the movie, I think, after. I haven't seen it. But how did that all come about? That was with Matt Carroll, who I've met, and you guys did really well with that. And I'm sure there's probably, you know, more to be done. I mean, it was a 20-minute short. Like, talk us through how that all came to life and the process and the fun of doing it and shooting it in Bangkok. It was very Thailand-centric story, I would say, or Bangkok-centric with the themes. And yeah, talk us through a bit of that.
So, as most great things happen, or as most great things start, this started in the pub, and it was on Soi 8. And I'm pretty sure it was the Kiwi pub before it moved across the road. And I was sitting down with Matt Carroll, who is a novelist, and he lives in London to spend some time. He lives in Sussex, I think, actually, but worked in London at the time. And we would always meet up as he was passing through. So I was there with a pint of cider. I think Gary Rutland was there with a glass of wine, and Matt was there. And he mentioned that he was looking to find someone who could make a film, and that he had access to some finance and he had a script. I just said, I can do it. No idea at all how I was going to do it. No real idea. I did study media arts in the UK after school. So I was, you know, I went to film college basically, but none of that was really relevant now. You know, that was like dark rooms and shit, dark ages. So I had to learn very quickly. And we had like a few months to get it together to find a team. So I looked at all the Thai films I could find. My friend, German friend TV, who's like my researcher, was extremely helpful in sticking all these films onto like USB flash drives, and I go through them. And I know when I see good work, you know, when you just see good work, and you know when it's good camera work, yeah. So I had a few possible people I could use, Thai mainly as a director, but then I watched P. The Possessed, which was directed by Paul Spurrier, but it was the cinematography, the camera was by Richie Moore, a young Richie Moore. He must have been 24 or something when he did that. And immediately I thought, oh, this is beautiful. This is just really nice camera work. Some of the stuff he was doing, the camera would pan, go all the way down the Thai government bus and then go out the door and pick up the people on the street. And there'd be a scene in a classroom where there's a book and the pages like flap open with the wind blowing in. All these beautiful little touches that I really liked. So I arranged to meet Richie at W District, and he turned up. We had a few beers, and he was like, didn't even talk money. She's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's make a fucking movie, Jim. And then, you know, at the time, I thought it was all coincidence that these things were happening. So, like, then a sound guy would come and sit on the table with us, and then the editor would come and sit. You know, we'd socialize, chat, have fun. In hindsight, Rich probably set all that up. I don't know. But yeah, so I had my whole team more or less in one bath at W District in Crackadog. So yeah, and they were kind enough to me to not make me feel so inadequate. And they realized I had some input story-wise as well, stuff like that. I brought some shit to the table, you know. I brought some writing skills, but the technical stuff, the equipment, I just had to learn. I'm a bit better
so
now.
Your role, what was your? I mean, you were producer on that, right? That was your title.
I was the producer, yeah. I was the guy that gets blamed or praised. No, you get, as a producer, you get blamed when it goes wrong, but you don't see any awards. You don't see any awards for producer at the Oscars, do you?
True. I mean I love learning by doing though like that. I mean it's different and not quite as big a project, but when I shot the Dark Karma teaser, it was the same thing. I had no idea what I was doing, and which was really fun, and you know, probably I would say less pressure really, because it was, you know, it was me it was my project, so I didn't really have anyone to answer to in terms of the output of it, but the process of just bringing together a team and the kind of location scouting, which is probably one of the most fun parts, just because Bangkok has so many awesome locations for shooting, and then just bringing that all together as a vision, and then getting into. Did you go into the edit room? Were you part of the edit, or were you just like, were you there right through the process? Were you?
Yeah, I have to be. It's yeah. I mean, all the. Like with the sound production, for example, I went to Spike and Stein's Soy 13 condo, and he just has all these strange like techno, analog, like sound bites, which would work for different parts in the movie. So there's all these sounds, and I just had to chop them all down or remember them. So, and then I took those files to the edit. And also I had the script, so I knew where everything went. So yeah, and I've just began editing myself, and I can do a little bit, but no, Jesse was fantastic in the booth, and yeah, I was over his shoulder.
And did the end product come out as you envisaged it through the production shoot, or because so much can change, right? I mean, that's the great fun and the kind of magic of creating content, creating a movie or series or whatever. Is just you kind of have a vision, you bring a bunch of people together, you have a script, then actors start saying different things to the script. That's fine, they have their opinion. A location can then change what you thought it might look like, and you finally get to an edit room with a more content than you need to pull together the in your case 20 minutes or whatever it was, or an hour or 2 hours if it's a movie. But yeah, how was the vision, how much did that match what came out at the end, in terms of what you thought, or did it change? Was it as you imagined it would be?
He's the writer and director of With Now Than I. Is it Bruce Robertson or something? Anyway, for my
film, but I couldn't tell you. Yeah.
For my research, I watched tons and tons and tons of interviews with directors and producers to try and get a handle on how to do this. And he was saying the night before they began shooting With Now and I, he was at the bar drinking vodka. He was really drunk. He was scared. He was really fucking nervous. And the producer walked over to him and said, "Look, you can have the best director, you can have the best actors, you can have the best producer, you can have the best sound guy, you can have the best makeup, wardrobe, catering, whatever. But if you don't have luck, you're fucked. If you don't have luck, it doesn't matter." And with Crazy Medicine, we were just really lucky, really, really lucky to get some of the shit we did. And I remember at the screening saying to Matt and the financiers, the guys who put up the money, that I would have totally taken this before I started. If someone said, "Okay, this is what it's going to be like. Do you want to make the movie now, or will you just go with this?" I would have taken that. So it's better than I thought it would be. It looked nice.
Awesome. And what are there any follow-on plans, if you can share them? I don't know, but there was always ambitions to take that and build it into something bigger, right? And then go and shoot a full movie or a series, or did I imagine that? I can't remember whether
we better do it soon, because everyone's going to get old. It was 2017, so a lot of the actors probably don't look quite like they did then. So yeah, I mean, it's something that we knocked on doors and stuff, and it's just, I don't know. It would make a good prison. We were talking about prison films before. It would make a good prison film, because it ends with Emily being arrested at the airport, and then you could put her into prison, and her father could come over with a load of cash to try and get her out, to bribe her out. Then he goes to a bar, he sleeps with a girl, she steals the money, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So yeah, we did like write a potential second, third series, but yeah, if you're listening and you want to invest in Crazy Medicine, give me a call.
I will leave all the details on the pod of that, definitely. Let's talk about Dark Karma a little bit. You and obviously you and Richie have kind of taken hold of that, which is exciting. Richie, I love Richie's work, and having watched the rather disturbing Who's Watching Oliver, which is an awesome piece of work it's incredible what he did with that. How are you guys? How are you guys going with that? How does it feel as a project, and where you're going to take it? Is there this kind of third person creative vision coming together?
Yeah. It's a beautiful, beautiful process. Really, really productive. Totally into the film. And our process started just like talking about it. So we'd go to the pub and have a couple of beers, 10 or 12 beers, and talk about the film and where we could see it going, what worked, what didn't work, the general kind of structure. So these creative sessions are important, especially if you have to retain all that information, obviously. So it's important not to wait too long until you start doing pages. So the process now is I'm in Ekamai, Richie's in Prakanong, which is just across the road. So he arrives, we have lunch, we talk about it, we go to 7, we buy Leo beer, and we've even considered calling the Russian character Leo in homage.
Brilliant.
In homage to the liquid that fuels the process. So he will march up and down. He's standing, walking continually, just pacing like a fucking leopard, you know, in a cage, walking up and down with a large bottle of Leo in his hand. I'm at the typewriter with the final draft open, and the good thing of writing for so long is I'm pretty quick now, so I can kind of keep up. And then we'll go back, and then I will stand up. I will act out a scene, and I'm character A, he's character B. We're experimenting with voices, with accents, and we're looped back ideas where they fit in. So it's been really, it's been lucky. Organically, we work really well together. Nothing's forced, nothing's difficult. It's just a lot of fun, and it's a great script.
So you actually write. So when you do these sessions, you're actually in Final Draft writing actual script, actual dialogue, or you just taking notes and you go away and write afterwards?
No, I'm in Final Draft, so I'm typing it as we go, which is a pain in the ass because you have to change, you have to toggle between action, dialogue, character. Whatever.
Yeah. That's why I'm surprised you do that. It's an interesting way of working.
So the way to cheat it is you just you stick it all in action. And you type up the dialogue, just type the name, paragraph, dialogue, name, paragraph, and then go back up, sort out all the different functions later. But it's amazing they haven't come up with a better program, isn't it, for doing this?
Yeah, well, actually, it's so difficult because people have their own ways of working, right? So and that's something else I want to ask you about. I'm speaking to Don Linder at some point in the near future as well. About his process. I mean, I don't think screenwriters necessarily all work to the same process. So then it's very hard to create technology that supports that, because I think everyone has their own ways of doing things. I mean, you're talking about basically being in a collaboration session with a director who's marching around, throwing out ideas, and you're actually in real time writing dialogue. I couldn't imagine doing that. For me, like when Don and I worked on Dark Karma a couple of years ago, we would spend kind of hours together in session, scribbling notes and going through different scenarios, and then then he would then go away and write. So yeah, I think what you just said there, and there's almost like you need a different application for it. But I wonder whether other people work like that. It's quite, I would imagine it's a relatively unique way of working on a script, I think.
But not historically. It goes back to, I mentioned before about how I dug the kind of 1930s, 40s pulp fiction writers. And what these guys would do, they would hire a secretary who worked in who would go and live with them. I don't know. Actually, I never thought of it that way. But she would, or they'd hire an office with a secretary who could take dictation. So the old pulp writers used to stroll around the office or the room with their fedora hat on and their fucking suit and their cigar and their whiskey, and they would just tell them the story. And these normally, middle-aged women would type them up like this. So I guess I'm the middle-aged woman in this scenario, and Richie is the cool fedora-wearing pulp fiction writer.
There's actually probably a great story in the writing of this story, because it sounds interesting in it. Yeah, well, you should do it. It's interesting in itself as a little process, as a little kind of mini movie to how a movie is written. So yeah. Coming towards the end, quick fire questions, and I wanted to just ask you, favorite movies. What are they? Tell us what are your top movies over the years? Could be 1, can be 3, can be 10. I don't mind.
Apocalypse Now.
Yep.
Apocalypse Now. Clockwork Orange. Casablanca.
Interesting one.
And I've got to go for something 80s horror. I Bill. Halloween. And
that's a good one. Yeah.
I watched a movie 2 nights ago that I hadn't seen before, and it feels like it should be included because it's fresh in my mind, but it might sink down the list. Gone Girl.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
It's fucking awesome.
Wait,
on a writing level, it's brilliant.
Who is it? Who's the?
It's Fincher, isn't it? I think.
Oh yeah, no. Who's the?
The actor's Affleck.
Yeah, but doesn't
sound
Affleck?
Guy is Trent Reznor.
Affleck directs it as well, though, right?
I thought it's David Fincher. I might be wrong.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he directed the one about the bank job, actually. But Affleck's really interesting because if you look at the beginning of his career, he was awful. You know, I don't know if you remember, there was this, he got caught, you know, parked up somewhere in like Santa Monica Boulevard with Acting for Dummies in the back seat of his convertible. I always remember this being splashed across the Sun newspaper or something. It was it was really amusing because he really was quite awful at the beginning, and he's just grown into this, you know, really accomplished now actor and director, and he's directed a few really good movies, and yeah, he's really kind of grown through his career. Yeah, I don't know how you feel about that, but yeah, for me, he's now enjoyable to watch and directed some really cool shit. So
yeah, good ball. I just want to slip Pulp Fiction into that list as well.
Yeah, of course. I can remember watching that in the movies. Do you think, I mean, Gone Girl's a recent movie, but it's much harder these days. There have been some good movies, but it does seem like, maybe this is just me getting old, it does seem like, you know, 20, 30 years ago, there was a lot more good stuff made. And my girlfriend and I now have I've been going through watching old movies with her. We watched Jaws, right, about 2 months ago. Yeah. And she was like, oh, I don't want to watch that. She was like, you know, up till then, she was like, oh, I don't want to watch anything more than 5 years old. So I said, well, just try. And she watched Jaws. She was just totally blown away with it. And I was like, you know, the amount of work that goes into the characters and, you know, and then you go and watch something, you know, you're in the mood to watch something you don't have to think about. But a lot of the kind of more modern films, of course, you get all the superhero films, and they're so shallow. You know, I mean, there's a lot more gloss, and the effects as well. Like Som and I both watching things. It's just, I mean, the first Alien's the best example. That there is, yeah, that's a guy in a suit, and you're absolutely on the edge of your seat. And then you get, as soon as CGI comes into it, you just lose the kind of frightening element. It's really interesting how CGI has added an awful lot to movies, but it's also taken away probably as much, really.
Yeah, Jaws, also technically it was very good. You know, the camera, there's that shot, when the camera's on a dolly pulling back, but he's zooming at the same time. And it's on a beach as well, which is tricky. So maybe it's on tracks, maybe it's on a train, rails, but it's pulling back and going forward at the same time. So it gives you that menacing image. Yeah, CGI is good sometimes, right? I like some of the CGI horror films. There's a Malaysian kid, right? I say kid, he's probably my age now. But he did Saw, the original Saw, and made a load of money off of that, and did like Haunted and all these really cool horror movies. But they use a lot of CGI. So yeah, it's all right, sparingly, but don't rely on it too much.
Yeah, I think used in the right way, it's great. But there's no getting away from the fact some of those older. I mean, actually, we tried to watch The Shining. That would be in my top films, but it was that went off after 15 minutes. Son was a bit frightened. It's that
what
film.
Part? What part did you bail?
I think
part?
I think it was the when the kid's on the tricycle and turns the corner.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I think it was then, and the two girls, and I mean, I love that movie. That's in my top movies. But even now, when I watch it, it's not really like, you know, frightening in the way of, oh, I'm frightened. It's chilling, you know. And for me, the bit that really gets you is when it's so simple the way it's done, but is when he first meets the janitor. I don't know if you call him a janitor, but the guy just turns and he says, you like ice cream, Doc? But he says it in his head. But they do it very cleverly because you see him turn around and say it to the kid. But the kid thinks he sees him, but actually it's him talking in his head to the kid. So,
it could be a story about, you know, alcoholism as well. You know, it's a really big thing, and you know, the chaos of being an alcoholic as opposed to the order of sobriety. A lot of that's in it. You know, it begins with him or his son knocking over the papers, you know, and him lashing out, stopping drinking, going to the house. It's the house like a metaphor for addiction. You know, it works on many levels.
Yeah, it is a great movie. Hey, look, before we knock off, we were chatting about something before we started recording, which is that image behind you, which I know has a great story to it. So you've got a Zoom background, but that's a photo that you took, right? And
yes,
that is the guy that I've seen in Bangkok around the MRT, around the BTS stations. You want to just talk us through it as a closing story, because it is a little bit of an interesting one, I think.
Okay, so he is a street artist, and he creates these like mind maps, like engineer style diagrams all around the city. Like he could be unlocking some kind of code, and he believes he is. You know, he believes there's a malevolent, there's an evil power in Bangkok that centers around Soi 11. And this is the overpass bridge around about Soi 10, Bangkok. So it's just before you get to that. And he is, you know, they say artists are unapproachable, but he's like really difficult. I've come up to him a few times when he's working. He shouts at himself, you know, he screams, he barks like a dog, you know, he's fucking crazy. He's what the French call art brut, outsider art. And now he is being displayed in the National Thai Gallery in Thailand.
Oh, that I didn't know.
He's got rooms there now. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So he is, and he's featured in the opening shot of Dark Karma. So we're up in the sky, and we're looking at the sunset, this brilliant orange pollution pink Bangkok metropolis sunset going down. The drone goes down through a tangled mess of wires, which is typical to Bangkok, right? The pylons with all this craziness of wires. And then we go beyond, we go through the wires, and we go down, and we land on a piece of work that this guy's created. He's planning, you know, the apocalypse or whatever. And then the camera picks up, we look at his face, he laughs, and then off, we're into the movie. So, but it is actually important to the theme as well of the rewrite.
Awesome.
But yeah, I love the guy. He's crazy, but he's best artist in Bangkok.
Awesome. Well, cheers. Yeah, I've seen him. I've been there when he's by the BTS. So cheers for sharing that. And that's great that they've got him in a gallery. I had no idea about that. That's good that he's actually, because he does. There is something behind what he's doing. It's very interesting, and yeah, great that he's out there and being displayed in some way. So, well, it's been good to chat, James, JD Strange. Any other names to go to? I'm not sure, but do you want to share where people can find out more about you? I will put it in the notes, but just, you know, where people can find your books, information on you, everything else. What's the best direction?
Yeah, I'm on social media a lot. So I'm either JD Strange or James Newman on Facebook and Twitter. There's a website, www.jdstrange.com, and you can buy official JD Strange merchandise, posters, books, flamethrowers through the website, vegan flamethrowers. Did I tell you I got poisoned? I got poisoned by a fucking hipster today. Did I tell you this? I came out of the relative safety of Big C Superstore in Ekamai, and there was, you know, sometimes you go into this zone of like hipster kind of organic farm foods and shit like that. And there was a stall selling bagels, and I was attracted to the bagel stall. So I ordered a chicken Caesar bagel, and I stuck it in my bag. I got back home. I took like one bite, 2 bites, and then my stomach just fucking clenched, you know. And it reminded me, Matt, of that time at the Indian restaurant.
I forgot about that Indian restaurant. That's probably we don't want to go into that on here, but it's I mean, I don't know how if that Indian restaurant in Bangkok is still there, but that is a frightening.
It's still there. It's still there. It's still ticking over.
It's a frightening place. We didn't actually get poisoned there, but well, we also didn't eat the food, did we? We ran away pretty fast. I don't know what we were served.
So if you do visit the website, you can get vouchers, which are good for a poisonous hipster bagel, or alternatively, you can get vouchers for the Indian restaurant on Soy, whatever it was, 31, I think. Yeah. So yeah, log on.
Awesome, mate. It's been good to chat. And also, by the way, I love the artwork. I've noticed there's a real theme to this artwork across the site. It's really nice.
But someone said it looks kind of erotic. Look at it again.
It
looks kind of erotic. Like there's the opening flaps of the tent. And
oh yeah. Now I see where you're going with that. Yeah. Sure.
It wasn't my intention.
Fair enough.
Polish. He's Polish.
Well, he's good. He's done a good job. I like it. Maybe maybe you can incorporate that into some of the Dark Karma themes. So.
Sure, we can get him on board.
Awesome, mate. Okay. Hopefully we get to catch up in Bangkok sometime soon, because I mean, as lovely as it is up here in Pai, I really need a trip to the Big Smoke. It's been a year, I think. So yeah, I shall hopefully be down soon, and we can catch up in person, have a beer, meet you and Richie.
Yeah, try and do it before we wave goodbye to 2020, which has been a fantastic year for not many people.
Yes,
but yeah, it'd be good to see you down here before we ring the bells.
For sure, mate. Oh, all the best. Yeah, good to chat, and we shall catch up again soon.
Okay, cheers, buddy. Take care.
Cheers.
The two were Muhammad Ali and Sonny Barger, the president of Hell's Angels.
This is 1095.